Welcome to Kairos Conversations. Today, we are doing a special tribute to Michael Heiser and his theological legacy. We are going to take a look at a word that was very important to him in his theology, Elohim. Stay tuned. Theologian, scholar Michael Heiser went to be with the Lord this week. And as a way of both remembering him and his theological legacy, we're going to be talking a little bit about his work and celebrating his work, and particularly with one word that you have read and probably heard many times, but maybe have not been aware of the complexities. This word Elohim. If you know Michael Heiser's work, then you probably know where we're going with this. But Courtney, can you start us off by just talking to us about Michael Heiser?
Yeah, so Michael Heiser is just an Old Testament biblical scholar who really broke onto the scene with this book called The Unseen Realm. And so this book kind of changed things, and he did podcasts everywhere. Pretty much a Christian had a podcast talking about this book, and it really, for a lot of people, has kind of changed the way that they read the entire Bible. And once you read it, it will be hard for you to read the Bible any other way. He always said, this will change the way you read the Bible. But he was just always a very pastoral biblical scholar. He had a very public presence because he worked with Logos Bible software. So he always was very close in connection with the local church and had lots of YouTube videos. So he has a huge YouTube presence. And because of that, just had a large impact on the church directly that a lot of scholars normally don't have when they're just publishing in academic journals and working at their local seminary. So because of that, Michael Heiser was able to really do a lot to change the way that we view the Bible and understand the worldview of the Bible itself.
Yes. I mean, I'm here as somebody that has been influenced by his work kind of in secondary terms. Many people mentioned and have never engaged directly with his writings, though I've heard much about them from my friend Courtney here, and I'm really looking forward to digging in the coming weeks and months. In these circumstances, I want to know. I want to understand what he has offered our theological community, and I'm excited about this conversation today. Even for me, kind of as an introduction to some of these categories, and to be able to hear some of his ideas. And today we're going to talk about Elohim, right? I mean, I remember in Hebrew class, just now on this flashcard, Elohim on one side, God/gods on the other side. Does Elohim mean God or gods, Courtney?
Yeah, so usually when we first talk about this word and we tell students hey, Elohim can be singular, G-O-D, capital G-O-D, or plural, lowercase g, gods. We lay out this really simple distinction and we tell them, context will tell you the difference. If you have a singular verb, you're dealing with capital G-O-D, God. And if you have a plural verb or plural circumstance, you're going to be dealing with gods, lowercase and plural. And the reason why that is somewhat complicated is because we're actually going to see several examples where we're using the plural of that word with singular verbs where we're not referring to the unique God of Israel. And so it can kind of throw you off initially. And this was one of those moments that Michael Heiser even had himself. And in realizing this, it's wow, this term is a lot more complicated than we thought. But as people here in the West, where we normally call God, capital G-O-D, when we hear that term, we tend to think of all of those amazing omni attributes. He's all powerful, he's all knowing, he is the creator, the redeemer. We hear the word God and we think of that. And so then if the Bible is going to use Elohim in all these different ways, obviously it's not using Elohim to refer to all these different types of beings, thinking of those attributes. So Elohim is not really a functional kind of term. It's an ontological type of term, and it's telling us something about the nature of these types of beings. So we're going to look at that word today and see all the different ways it's used. Yeah, so you see here, there's Michael Heiser on the left. Here's his book, The Unseen Realm, if you wanted to check that out, where he really lays this all out. But there's our word Elohim on the right-hand side. That I am ending on the end of Elohim is that plural ending on any masculine noun in Hebrew. You can think of other masculine nouns that you know of that end in an im ending, like Nephilim or Anakim or something like that. But normally, like I said, we teach students to memorize that as capital G-O-D God or lowercase G-O-D gods, plural.
That makes sense. It's plural, in its morphology, right, in the way
Mhm.
that it's written. But we're going to see the usage is a bit more complex than that. Not just on like, are we talking about Yahweh or somebody else or somebody's else?
Hmm.
But even across those lines, so it's a little bit complex.
Yeah, so one reason why I decided to do this video is because Michael Heiser always talks about this, and it normally is in much longer videos, and you normally aren't focusing in and zeroing in on Hebrew like this. So the way we do things here at Kairos Conversations is we want to look directly at that Hebrew. So let's look at Psalm 82, because this was a super important passage for him, and he always starts out by talking about the importance of Psalm 82:1. So we see here all of the references to God, the unique God of Israel, will be in yellow, and all the references to any other type of being will be in red. So it says, God stands in the divine council. In the midst of gods, he judges. So those two verbs there, stands and he judges, are both singular. So we know that first one is talking about the singular figure, and in this case, unique God of Israel, because he's the one who judges. But then the second reference to Elohim there is translated in the ESV as gods. You can see the NESV 1995 translates that as rulers, and the NIV puts it in scare quotes and says gods. And so really, how should we translate this? And as we build this case of what an Elohim is, what type of being an Elohim is, we'll show you why rulers or human men can't work. Human men don't work for a number of reasons. In Psalm 82, which Michael Heiser always lays out, it says that they will die like men and be judged like men. And so you're like, okay, well, we can't be referring to men because all men die, so we can't be referring to rulers. But why does NIV
There'd be no
put it
shock value here if we're talking about men. If God saying men will die and be judged like men would be obvious, but saying these gods, these Elohim, these gods, these whatever they are, will die and be judged like men. That's something relevant. That's something interesting to say.
Right, exactly. And we also know it should be plural in that second instance because it says in the midst of Elohim. And you can't be in the midst of a singular, so you have to be in the midst of a plural. And so what are we referring to here? And also, why do we have scare quotes? Like I said in the NIV, like are these fake things that God is going to judge? You know, what are we talking about here? So this led Michael Heiser to develop what he calls the divine council worldview, that Yahweh is the Most High God in the midst of a council of other spiritual beings, and which initially in Eden included humanity, that we were supposed to be part of God's family, both his human and non-human family. And he has rebellious spiritual beings that are a part of his family. He also has rebellious humans that are a part of his family. And obviously this Psalm 82 is talking about those rebellious spiritual beings.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, already these are some big things. I mean, the divine council worldview. Like this is like if you had told me, what is Michael Heiser known for? That's the phrase that would have popped into my head.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you want to define that for us now, just in a few words, or if you want that to kind of come up over the course of these examples we're looking at. But help us understand what that divine council worldview is, and how that helps us read the Old Testament and really the whole Bible better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it really is a way of describing, again, how God created the world to be. And we all know that he created humans, right, from the dust of the earth. So we call these terrestrial beings, like we are terrestrial beings. But then he also created these non-human, non-terrestrial beings that we typically call like angels and demons, right? And so this is what Michael Heiser terms the unseen realm. But all of these beings together were supposed to rule and reign with God in his creation. And so in ruling and reigning together, they were supposed to establish God's kingdom rule and his peace throughout all of the earth. And so that's why it's called a divine council, that, we are part of God, the divine, and his council, like, the people who rule in his kingdom.
Very helpful. That makes sense. That's and that being a background through which we read the Old Testament and the relationship between humans and unseen beings and how all this works together, pops up here and there throughout the biblical narrative. That's right. Good. You got some places where we can see this?
Yeah, so Elohim is used to describe a lot of different beings in the unseen realm. So not just, again, not just the unique God of Israel with all the omni attributes, but a lot of different types of beings. And even if we take that singular plural verb distinction, it kind of begins to fall apart just a little bit. So let's look first at 1 Kings 11. So here in 1 Kings 11:33, it says, "They have forsaken me and worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh, the god of Moab, and Milcom, the god of the Ammonites." All three of those references that are in red, like I said, because we're referring to people other than the unique God of Israel, are in the plural. They're in the plural, that Elohim, even though we're referring to a singular God, Ashtoreth, or a singular God, Chemosh, or a singular God, Milcom, right? So the plural singular distinction doesn't always work. We still might refer to them as Elohim.
Gosh, so like, what do we do? I mean, is context all we got?
Context is what you have. Context is what you have. You have to look and see, like, are we describing things that are attributed to God and no other gods, right? Or are we talking about, again, some of these other supernatural beings that exist in our world? So in that example in 1 Kings 11:33, we're talking about the gods of the nations. In Deuteronomy 32, we are talking about what is normally translated as demons. And these are going to be regional deities. And so it says they sacrificed to demons, shadim is the Hebrew word, that were not God, and to gods they had never known. So again, there's that Elohim again. So we're talking about demons here, and it's in the plural, to gods they had never known.
So these are regional deities. Who else do we see? What else do we see Elohim as?
Yeah, so we first have the gods of the nations in the 1 Kings 11 reference. We have regional deities here, which normally when we get into the Greek New Testament, that word demons translates better to principalities. So that word that gets translated in English is principalities. But then also, like, it's super weird. Okay, so far we've been dealing with like we see spiritual beings here, but it can also refer to humans in 1 Samuel 28, which is very weird. So this is a story, briefly, where Saul has apparently said, okay, there's going to be no more, diviners in Israel. And so he kicks out all the diviners. But, Samuel has passed on and Saul needs to talk to him. So somehow he knows where there is one. So he goes to the witch of Endor and he tells her. Yeah, he tells her. He's like, hey, I need you to contact somebody. He's disguised. And he tells her who to contact. And he says to her, do not be afraid. What do you see? And the woman says to Saul, I see a God, an Elohim, coming up out of the earth. And he said to her, what is his appearance? And so that was Samuel. That was the disembodied spirit of Samuel. And again, this is Elohim being used in the singular, even though it's a plural form, used in the singular to refer to Samuel. So again, that singular plural distinction that you learned initially doesn't always work out. And so what does this tell us? What are Elohim? And so Michael Heiser wraps this up kind of neatly for us. But yeah, that Samuel example always blew my mind, seeing that he was referred to as an Elohim.
Yeah, that's wild. So whatever Elohim is, I mean, the gods of the nation, these kind of regional deities, and Samuel himself, after he has died and is no longer with his body. Yeah. So altogether, what are Elohim? What are our options?
Yes. So whether it's singular or plural, what really is a better description of an Elohim is a disembodied spirit being. So humans are embodied with our spirit, and so Samuel, whenever he dies, becomes part of the disembodied dead. But then again, we have those demons, we have the divine council members, the people who are still, like the angels and other spiritual beings who are still allegiant to Yahweh, like the seraphim and the cherubim and those kinds of council members. And then we also have the gods of the nations. But then sometimes that word can be used to refer to Yahweh or the entire Godhead, the angel of the Lord and the Spirit of the Lord in the Hebrew Bible. So that's really our kind of overlap. And Michael Heiser always ends with this chart to show it to everybody. But yeah, that's how he lays out the term Elohim for us.
Wild. Man, it's so fascinating. You can see how this would radically change the way that you read the Bible. If you take this to be, the ancient worldview, and it's so easy to import things, be it kind of our own philosophical monotheism of the day, or even like the kind of theism of somebody like Plato. It's all these omnis, the ways that these have worked themselves into Christian theology. It's important for us to go back and say, what did these words mean? What did a word like Elohim mean in its ancient Hebrew context, and this is really really helpful. So, why does this matter for us today, as Christians? Is there something in the biblical witness that really brings this home and shows our place within this framework?
Yeah, it matters. Again, it matters for us because we need to read the ancient text through the eyes of the ancient Israelites. And that's why, whenever we get into the New Testament, they have this full orbed view of what the unseen realm looks like. We get these beautiful pictures from Paul in Romans, neither death nor life, angels nor demons. And he goes through that whole list. Or again in Ephesians, where he has the prince of the power of the air and principalities and all this good stuff. So it matters a lot for how humans we engage with the world. Are we going to be allegiant to Yahweh and part of his divine counsel and participating with his divine counsel? Or are we going to be a part of the rebellious spiritual beings, the rebellious Elohim amongst us? But more importantly, what we see is, like I said, in the beginning in Eden, we were created to be a part of God's family. And the promise that Satan held out to Adam and Eve was that they can become Elohim, right? That they could become one of these supernatural spiritual beings. And we see that they're kicked out of the garden and denied immortality as a result of that. And so the whole human problem has been answering this problem of death, right? We see that in 1 Corinthians 15, especially, is that like death is our biggest problem. And that's one of the reasons Christ came into the world, so that we can experience the resurrection unto eternal life. And so in that discussion, Christ says that we will become a part of the divine council. We are going to become Elohim. So we see this really clearly laid out in Luke chapter 20, which is really exciting. And Jesus said to them, this is when he's answering the Sadducees who are challenging him about the resurrection. He says, the sons of this age marry and are given in marriage, but to those who are considered worthy to attain to that age and to the resurrection from the dead, neither marry nor are given in marriage, for they cannot die anymore, because they are equal to angels and are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection. And you see also in 2 Peter 1:4, where he says, we become partakers of the divine nature. And so we will be granted immortality and will be able to rule and reign with God in the new Eden, the new heavens and the new earth. Yeah, that's the story of the Bible, basically, right there with that one word, Elohim.
Amen. That's great. This is so helpful and a really exciting introduction to the theology of Michael Heiser. Do you have any good places for our listeners to start if they've never engaged with his thought before?
Yeah, so his book, The Unseen Realm, is a great place to start. He's got a little bit more accessible version of that called Supernatural with less footnotes if you're not a footnote person. But also, he's got a ton of YouTube content, and probably the place that lays it out the best are his Supernatural seminars. Also, Logos created some documentaries where like Corbin Burnson is like narrating them. So it's really high quality stuff. And so we'll link some of those things down in the description, and also an article by Michael Heiser where he lays out all of these Elohim type references as well. So if you're someone who likes to listen, go to the Supernatural seminars. If you're someone who likes to read, go to Unseen Realm. And if you want to read something shorter, go to the article. That's where I would throw you.
That is great. So helpful. Any final thoughts about this and what it means for us as followers of Jesus?
Yeah, like I said, this can be kind of difficult to come to at first. I know that like a lot of people, like I just introduced my dad to this and he was like, can you imagine if I went into my Sunday school class and said that we are gods? Like that would blow everybody's mind.
Yeah.
So we are not polytheists. We are not polytheists, but what we do believe is that, again, God is a God who rules over all of creation, and he intends for every single being that he's created to participate with him in his kingdom rule. And so we're still, he still is a unique figure. He's described in terms, he's the God of gods. There is no God like him. There is no Elohim like him. So we're still, monotheists in that regard, but we are supposed to participate in God's own life. So yeah, whenever you first hear this, you could be tempted to think we're polytheists or something like that, or believe in a pantheon.
We are not polytheistic here at Kairos.
Right. Yeah, so that would be my caution to a lot of people, but it does give you a like renewed sense of purpose of like, hey, I wake up and I get to participate with God. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you, Courtney. And for those listening, go check out Michael Heiser's work. What a blessing to just the world of Christian scholarship. If you like this kind of content, if you like talking about the Bible, talking about Old New Testament through the lens of Greek and Hebrew, make sure you like, subscribe. We have a Patreon page. We have a few patrons that support us in our work and get some goodies, some mugs and extra videos and stickers and things like that. So go to our Patreon and join there. But we will see you next time on Kairos Conversations.